This is take 572, YouTube. I hate being in front of the camera, but hello. It's been a crazy couple of months. Lost a very good friend. There's just been a lot going on. So thanks for sticking around. There's a very important story I feel like I need to tell everybody. I think it's definitely time, past time possibly. But I'm born under Mercury retrograde, so I'm always a little bit more outgoing during Mercury retrograde. Go me. There's a lot of excuses that I was telling myself. I don't know how to edit my videos. I hate being in front of the camera. This is a very vulnerable moment for me, and it's all very scary. So welcome to this big scary thing that I get to do today. I think that the story I have to tell you is important. There's a few disclaimers. So I am not telling you this to try to convince you to stop taking your meds. I am telling you this because it's what happened to me. It's how I came to healing. And I feel that if you are on medication, that using this process or any process that you come up with in conjunction with your medication could be pretty powerful and help get you off those meds or take those meds down in a really good, natural way. So I think that would be a positive thing. If not, that's cool too. Everybody's got their own process to go through. And so there's that. Anyone that I bring up in any of these stories, I'm talking to you, family. This isn't personal. This is to help other people. That's really why I'm here right now, being brave on YouTube. So I do have notes because I'm writing a book. I can't tell you the title of the book because I don't want it to get stolen. But it is something that I'm very excited to continue to work on. There have been so many things that have aligned in my life that I feel like my story will help people get to that aligned place as well. And for me, the most recent leg of my story begins in a place where I wasn't speaking to my mom. Why we weren't speaking wasn't really the point. You know, the ancestral karma needs to be healed, okay? It's not personal. And I didn't realize when I was suicidal and depressed that my ancestral karma would, at the end of that process, be relatively healed. We still have our moments, me and my mom, of misunderstanding, but I think all human beings do, especially during times like these. But the situations we're born into can feel very personal, and most karmic agreements feel super personal. And in order to see them for what they are, we really need to zoom out and gain objectivity and ask ourselves, what is this teaching me? No matter what it is that you're going through, we will be presented with that same lesson repeatedly and more insistently until we learn how to respond consciously as opposed to react unconsciously. Now, when I talk about these concepts, I'm not the kind of spiritual person who's going to tell you that you are supposed to be traumatized. That's not what I'm saying. There are guilty parties in trauma, and that's not something that we take lightly. So please understand that we're talking about general circumstances that we're born into. The past couple of decades for me had been really, really hard. I knew I needed to dig really deeply to heal whatever it was that was forcing me to repeat the same scenario of no car, no job, no money, no hope, thinking my friends hated me for who I was, really angry at my parents for giving birth to me just in the first place. It's like I had a lot of knowledge about the energetics on the planet and the necessity for us to all heal. But no matter how much you know mentally, walking the walk is really a whole other story. And this is what we in the spiritual community call shadow work. There's a wonderful teacher named Teal Swan that I love to watch. And she definitely has helped me work through a lot of this shadow work. So this whole story of healing really begins on August 7th, 2017 at 2 p.m. And the time here is very important because of the way that this story plays out. And again, like I'm just referencing my notes here because timelines for esoteric experiences can be a little wibbly wobbly. So it gets all jumbled up in the mind sometimes. I was in Rockland County, New York. It's where I was living at the time. And I went into a guided meditation for the lunar eclipse. I had been meditating every day for almost a full year at this point, and I always had spiritual practice before this, just not as consistently. So I began to follow the guided meditation, and I was taken completely off script. Okay. I didn't hear the guided meditation anymore. Instead, my perception traveled to the center of the earth where there was an old woman sitting in a rocking chair. And suddenly I was a baby in her arms, and she was rocking me. I looked into her face, and it looked a lot like my mom, especially the eyes. And she was stroking my head and saying in a soft voice, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry it had to be this way." And shh, shh. And then suddenly I was a child in her lap, and she said, "Now you're ready, it's almost over." I responded, "How do I get there?" And suddenly I was an adult standing in front of her, and then on a horse in a field. And I was riding the horse down a hill into the forest. And this was the most real vision I've ever had in my life, other than very lucid dreams. But this was very intense. It was like I was really there. I smelled the grass, and I was initially bareback on the horse, and as I rode down this hill into a forest, a saddle appeared and reins appeared in my hands, and my hands suddenly started to look old. A braid of my hair fell out of like whatever was securing it to my head. I felt it slip out, and I looked down at this braid, and it was silvery gray. So I realized as time was passing that I was riding this horse kind of as my future self. I realized that consciousness of a possible timeline was something that I was experiencing in the moment. As I rode down into the forest, there were like camps and fires, and it felt like home. It also sort of reminded me of Sherwood Forest a little bit. But it felt familiar, like my friends were all there and everyone was safe and okay and everything was cool. So, but as I dismounted, it was like my future self separated from my perception, and suddenly she was standing before me, and I asked her, "How do I get here?" And I have to just kind of like go off script a little bit right now and just say that I had purchased the Thoth Tarot card deck like several months prior. Actually, because my friend who just died, was the one who was like, "You should get this deck. You should get this deck." I always have considered Thoth very close to me. And so I kind of knew I needed to get the deck, but I'm not a fan of Aleister Crowley. So it took a lot of like breaking down my own stuff about Aleister Crowley to sort of like finally, I needed permission. Let's just say I needed permission from my guides and the universe to begin using this deck. I knew that the timing needed to be right, that I needed to be in a certain place up here. Okay. So when I asked my future self how to get where she was, she took her hands in mine and she said, "Use the Thoth cards." And then she had her hands in she had my hands in hers, and she pressed her head to my forehead, and I got what some people like to call a download, an energetic download. And since then, it's kind of been like having the strategy guide for my life. And I kind of haven't been the same since that vision. I haven't been the same since any of this, but I snapped back to it right after that. And I was back in my bed, feeling much lighter in spirit, but I could still feel like the static of depression and anxiety. But now I knew what to do. So I prepared a small ritual. I wrote down everything in my life that I wanted to let go of, my lack programming, addictions, anger with family members, several other things. I blessed it and I put it in a little bag with some herbs and a sigil. And that was being carried out by a friend out to Burning Man, which was happening like within a week of that big solar eclipse that year. And then I wrote down everything I wanted to see happen in my life, and a better housing situation in a town that I loved, which would eventually lead me to finding a piece of land. My eventual plans involve like I said in my last video, my eventual plans involve a permaculture education center, enough money to thrive, a successful business helping people, a great car that was under warranty, everything that I ever wanted I wrote down on this piece of paper, and I buried it in the garden. And then I blessed my tarot cards. And so that was a little ritual that I had come up with based on what the vision, did to my perception of my life. But I was still anxious and depressed during this process. As I said, I was meditating every day. And in the evening, my partner and I often watched gardening videos. So because we were like desperately trying to make the shady yard we had grow plants. And we had a little success. On the first day of the solar eclipse, August 21st, 2017, I found myself pinned under my boyfriend and 2 cats. And they were all asleep. We had been watching gardening videos. And on YouTube, when you leave autoplay on, there was a video that popped up called What 13 Years of Permaculture in Ireland Looks Like. And there's a wonderful woman named Colette O'Neill who has a channel called Bealtaine Cottage. And this video began to play. I'm going to link the video below. And as she walks up her driveway and gives this tour of her property, with her dog Jack, I just began to feel this deja vu sort of feeling. And as she approached the house, I began to cry. And when she walked into the backyard with like all of her potager beds and fruit trees and berry bushes, it was like I just began sobbing. Everything I ever dreamed of having was on this property. The fairy wood, the stone circle, the little cottage, everything. So she began describing her financial situation when she had bought the land, which was much similar to mine. And suddenly my dreams felt less like dreams and more like plans. Colette has a really soothing voice. And so I found myself watching her videos like from the beginning of her channel. Oftentimes I would use them as a sleep aid. And there was this one restless night that I found the video that would change my life forever. I'm going to link the video down for all of you, and I hope that this video will show you, will prove to all of you beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're really never alone in your suffering. And as soon as you're ready to do the work and acknowledge that you need to do the work, the healing really does come. So my legal name is Lynn, and my business name is like no attempt to hide that. I've been called Sky by several people spontaneously, and I consider that kind of my spiritual name. I'm telling you that now for a reason. And in the video linked below, Women of America, Colette is walking down into the Fairywood on August 7th, 2017, the day of the lunar eclipse I mentioned at the beginning of this video. She mentions that it's 7 p.m. in Ireland, which would have been 2 p.m. New York time, which was the exact moment I began my meditation. I remembered the date and time of the meditation because I have a meditation journal and I wrote that down. So I was very interested. After my reaction to this video, I was just curious as to where it lined up. The filming of it lined up, and it happened to fall at the exact moment of that lunar eclipse meditation. So she begins talking about how she's going for a walk in the Fairywood because she's feeling overwhelmed. And she went to bathe in the greenery. I had started to fall asleep. And then she goes on to say, I want to say hello to Lynn. I woke up and just sat up in bed. She went on, Lynn, my dear, dear American lady, wonderful, wonderful woman. Oh my word. How many of you incredible American women are out there in that country holding family together? Much understated, much underrated, and so damn powerful. You know the power that you hold. You know the life that you nurture. And you guys, I'm going off of Colette's script now, but like, seriously, you'll have to just watch the whole video and see how it ends. I guess she has another friend named Lynn that she was talking to, but it's like her words were exactly what I needed to hear. It was like a key unlocking something in my heart. And you'll notice that I do get a little emotional when I start talking about it, because it all sort of rushes back. Like, these moments just rush right back. And so her words were just exactly what I needed to hear, and they came at the exact moment I was ready to hear them. And that is what you do need to understand about this process, is that it doesn't happen on your timeline. You want to feel better right away. All of us want to feel better right away. That's why we're human. But these things don't happen in our timeline. These things happen on a much grander timeline, and it's for much bigger reasons that I will get into in future videos. So that night I went to sleep like with happy tears for the first time in a long time. And in the morning, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm an early bird. I'm one of those annoying morning people. I started the guided meditation I had been doing every day for more than 6 months straight, and that will be linked below as well. It's a basic chakra and energy alignment meditation, except this time, when I rooted my energy cord into the earth, the old woman in the rocking chair was there again. She stood holding her hands in the air, and the earth energy that usually came from the earth's core began flowing out of her instead. I worked this energy up through my chakras, and Colette, if you're watching the video, this is kind of the part that I left out in my letter. I did want to sort of just keep this for a little while. I think you understand that. So I worked this energy up through my chakras into my heart like I normally would in the meditation. When I called in my higher self and connected to the sun, one of my guides appeared and blew into my crown chakra. I then worked that energy down into my heart. And when those two energies met in my heart, a Kundalini experience occurred. This is the second time it's happened to me. The first time it happened to me, I was actually driving my car, and Chris Brown, of all things, was playing on the radio. This was before we knew he was like a terrible person. It's very strange. But this time I was safe in my bed, and the only thing that I can compare it to is like what happens to Lilu in The Fifth Element. It is that powerful. So eventually I came to. There's a lot of heavy breathing. It's to be frank, it is like the build up to an orgasm as far as what your body is doing, but it's throughout the body instead of just focused in one area, if you know what I mean. So I actually walked into the house, and my boyfriend will attest that he asked, "Did you lose power in my meditation room?" And I said, "Well, I was actually having a really powerful meditative experience. Like, did other houses lose power? Like, the lights are back on, now." And he was like, "Yeah, they were out for about 20 minutes. So we have a feeling that I actually interrupted our power grid in our house, because all the neighbors were still on." So that's a thing. Later on that morning, I spoke to a really good friend of mine. You know who you are. We have a conversation almost every day while she's on her way to work. It's been a tradition for a very long time, for about 6 years now. And while I was on the phone with her, I started talking about this, and I started crying, and I cried so hard that something just popped. And from that moment forward, I have not felt anxious or depressed or suicidal. So that's the information that I felt that I really needed to get to all of you, is that this isn't going to be a singular experience. I'm not special. I'm not special at all. I'm just another person. I later wrote that letter that I mentioned to Colette, and I told her that the arms of the goddess had reached out from Bealtaine Cottage to help heal me. And I hope that now that you know healing is possible, that there's a light at the end of a tunnel that you might be in. I hope it gave you renewed energy with whatever you're going through to keep walking. I now have everything I ever wanted except for that piece of land, but those developments are happening really rapidly, a lot faster than I thought, and I can't wait to announce my big news, but I do have to wait several months. But yeah, it's coming together, and I'd like that experience for all of you too. Okay, so lots of love. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm going to try to now edit the 7-minute and 55-second increments that my videos save as off of my cell phone because it's annoying. I don't know how long that's going to take me, but lots of love to everyone saying this. I know it's a really hard time on the planet, just in general, right now. And I just have a feeling that the future is going to surprise us. All right? Stay strong.